The number one mistake most coaches make when they are first starting out is they emphasize everything. So I want you to remember this phrase. If you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing. And this is a really common mistake because I'm going to talk about basketball. Basketball, you got to work on the offense, the transition offense, transition defense, your half-court defense, your half-court offense, your substitutions. There's a lot that goes into basketball or any sport when you are first starting out. You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard Podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream. In this episode, I'm going to break down the number one mistake most beginner coaches make and many other coaches besides beginners. So, as coaches, there's a lot for us to think about. And we are heading into basketball season, right? I'm a basketball coach. You could be any other type of coach. And when we start the season, every single program has constraints. Constraints would be their amount of practice hours they have, exactly the number of days they have, the practice space. Those are all certain constraints that you have as a coach, right? Obviously, if you are at a better school or better program, you'll have access to better facilities, more practice time, more resources, all that good stuff. Now, with that being said, the number one mistake most coaches make when they are first starting out is they emphasize everything. So I want you to remember this phrase. If you emphasize everything, you emphasize nothing. And this is a really common mistake because I'm going to talk about basketball. Basketball, you got to work on the offense, the transition offense, transition defense, your half-court defense, your half-court offense, your substitutions. There's a lot that goes into basketball or any sport when you are first starting out. And in last week's episode, I broke down how to start your season, how to get buy-in immediately from day one. So we're kind of reverse order now. Now, number one thing to be able to handle this challenge of emphasizing everything is we have to define our philosophy, our identity, our team identity. And you should have done that in week one. You get an opportunity, you bring your teammates together, you bring your philosophy in, you collaborate it with the personnel that you have. You have to be able to define what is important to you and your team. That is first things first. Otherwise, you are going to find and scroll on Instagram and be like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to take this, right? You're not going to have the focus you need. And it's interesting because when you are a beginner coach, you're figuring out who you are as a coach. And that is really important. Who you are as a coach now, hopefully you'll be a developed and better coach in 5 years. I know I am. I know my philosophy has some core tenets and principles that will never change. And each season presents its own opportunity to find that identity. So we want to make sure that you have 2 to 3 core values that you are making sure that you focus on in practice. And so the number one thing that I'm talking about that people make mistakes is they end up working on a ton of different things. And then they end up being okay at a lot of things. But by having a defined philosophy, defined focus, 2 to 3 values like I'm talking about, how that shows up for me this coming season without me giving up too much of what I am doing. So what is the best way to be competitive in high school basketball? My philosophy, defense to offense. That is a core tenet. That's one of our principles. Now, how do we bring that to life? If that is something that is important to me, which it is, we have to work on that in practice daily, right? How do we turn defense into offense? That is something that my athletes are going to be sick of me talking about. How can we turn defense into offense? We're going to do drills. We're going to watch film. I'm going to ask my athletes questions, and they are going to know. And this is where I think sometimes us as coaches, and I've made the mistake in the past, is we'll just say something one time and we think that's it. we have to teach every single day. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, the Hours podcast by Savvy. Very good podcast. Definitely recommend for the coaches that are listening, especially basketball coaches. They post a lot of other great content that's not even basketball related to great stuff. With that being said, we want to be teachers of the game. And I think I'm guilty of this in the past is, we'll say something, let's say defense to offense, and we'll just talk about it one time in practice, and we'll assume that everyone on our team understands what that means. We have to teach, reteach, and continue teaching until everyone on the team has got it, right? And so that's where the magic happens, because we can't just say defense, offense. Like, what does that mean? You have to define it. I'll give you one more thing, right? Number one for me in defense, and this is my opinion in basketball, got to be able to guard your yard. So essentially, number one skill to our defense will be one-on-one defense, because if we are getting beat one-on-one and we have to start the help side early, right, they're going to be able to get numerical advantages, 5-on-4s, because we can't stay in front of the person we are guarding, right? So guard your yard. Those are things what we're going to do daily. And the third point that I want to talk about is adapting your philosophy based on your personnel. Now, when I was at Venice High School, public high school, I was able to play a certain style, and now I'm at a private high school. It's different kids, different athleticism. I can't have the same exact philosophy. Now I have similar philosophies. Both philosophies were based on defense. Now the style of defense that I am teaching at the second school, at my private school, is different than the style of defense that was a little bit more aggressive, more focused on full court pressure, versus here it's more, focused on gaps. That being said, we have to be able to adapt that philosophy. And that's why that team meeting, like I talked about in the previous episode, is so important, because we want to get them to have buy-in, understand, hey, what do you want to be known for? Right? That way we're making this an experience, right? We're getting buy-in from our team. And then once we have that buy-in and they understand our core philosophy, they understand the vision, then we go execute that every single day. This is the beginning part of the season, right? I'm thinking basketball season, beginning part of the season. Now you go in, you're 5-10 games in, maybe even less. And one of the things that is one of the biggest reasons that people don't stick to their philosophy, well, what kind of adjustments can you make that align with your philosophy that will get your team to improve, right? Those are questions you ask yourself. Those first 5 to 10 games, and I remember, right, there were certain things I wanted to stat at, like my first year of coaching. I wanted to establish, certain cultural things, high fives, different things. And I gave up early because I thought they're going to get it and they're going to buy in right away. It takes time, right? And that's why we only want to have 2 to 3 values, 2 to 3 things we really focus on, right? You want to have a great engaged bench. The list can go on. We want to be able to do that early on, because it sets the tone. So last, I want to leave you with reflection questions, because I don't want to always give you the answer. Your experience is going to be different. So here, I have 4 different reflection questions for you. I'll recap my points, and then you'll be off and go and make an impact on kids. So questions that every coach need to ask themselves to define your focus and your philosophy. If you want your players to stop being confused and start making consistent progress, let's dive into the reflection questions now. So, what are you known for? As an opposing coach or a parent, watch your team play just once. What is one thing that they would immediately notice about your team? So that's question number 1. What is one thing, if I came into your practice, what would I notice about your team? Number 2, based on the athletes you currently have, right, the personnel you have, what are 3 non-negotiable skills or values that you must practice daily for your team to have success? Again, you get to define what that success is. And last, if your personnel is slow, what core values remain the same? And what specific actions must change in your system to accommodate your players? Again, right, we got to be able to adapt that philosophy. So number 1 mistake beginner coaches make is they emphasize everything. And how do we fix that? We fix that by 1, right, defining our philosophy, choosing 2 to 3 core values, adapting that to our personnel, and then we're constantly iterating and improving. So if you got value from this episode, please share it with a coaching friend, and make sure to give it a 5 stars, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We will be off next Friday. There will be no episode next Friday, so I will see you in 2 weeks. Coach Furtado, out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.